Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm happy to be joined by an incredible local rep and a strong voice for this community, Matt DeCourcy. It's always great to be here in Fredericton. I was here just a few weeks back, announcing that a re-elected Liberal government will give even more support to our seniors. Because after a lifetime of hard work, Canadian seniors deserve to retire with security and dignity. And today, I'm happy to highlight yet another of the way our Liberal team plans to move Canada forward for New Brunswickers, for families, and for communities. Unlike the Conservatives, Liberals believe that investing in people is the best way to grow our economy and help the middle class and those working hard to join it. And a big part of that includes investing in people's health. I'm proud to live in a country that has universal health care. But the reality is that too many people are slipping through the cracks. I'm talking about parents who have to spend the night in the ER when their kid gets sick because they're stuck on a wait list for a family doctor. Teens struggling with mental health challenges who are told to wait months for professional help. Des aînés qui ont perdu leur conjoint et n'ont pas accès aux soins à domicile. Des gens qui sont malades et doivent choisir entre se nourrir et acheter des médicaments dont ils ont besoin pour se remettre sur pied et retourner au travail. Dans un pays comme le nôtre, ça ne devrait pas s'arriver. On peut et on doit faire mieux. La bonne nouvelle, c'est qu'au cours des 4 dernières années, on a réalisé des progrès importants à ce niveau, en négociant et en renégociant de nouveaux accords sur la santé avec les provinces et territoires. On a annoncé des changements pour faire baisser le prix des médicaments, des changements qui permettront aux Canadiens d'épargner 13 milliards de dollars au cours de la prochaine décennie. Et on a mis sur pied un conseil pour émettre des recommandations sur la façon dont on devrait procéder pour mettre en œuvre l'assurance médicaments. Liberals understand that a healthy Canada is a prosperous Canada. And a re-elected Liberal government will keep moving our country forward and ensure that all Canadians get the health care treatment they deserve. And that starts with fixing the current situation around family doctors. Just imagine for a second, your kid has a fever and is having a rough day. Your spouse has spent weeks complaining of a pain they just can't quite place. Your elderly parent is starting to really struggle with age. Imagine needing access to the kind of specialized service that only a professional can provide. And then imagine being told that there's no one who can help. This is a real problem. So our team will take steps to ensure that under a re-elected Liberal government, all Canadians have access to a family doctor or a primary care team. Not only that, but we'll also continue to improve access to home care and palliative care. But we know that health is bigger than just the physical. Mental health is equally important. And so we will improve access to mental health services for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. We'll strengthen the Canada Health Act to make sure the full range of mental health services required by Canadians are available in every province and territory. And we'll bring in new national standards of care. Wait times and cost of treatment should never be a barrier to getting the mental health support you need. And finally, a re-elected Liberal government will bring in universal national pharmacare so that all Canadians can get the medications they need at an affordable price. Andrew Scheer wants people to think that this election is about me. But it's not about me. It's about Canadians. And between now and Monday, here's the question you have to ask yourself. Do you want $53 billion worth of Conservative cuts? Or do you want a progressive government that will continue investing in families and investing in communities? That's the choice. It's that simple. And it's that important. And in terms of the NDP and the Greens, remember this. If you want a progressive action, you need a progressive government, not a progressive opposition. Voting Liberal is the only way to stop Conservative cuts. Liberals know that the way to grow the economy is by investing in people. We have the record to prove it. Over the last 4 years, we've put more money in people's pockets by cutting taxes for the middle class and giving parents a monthly tax-free Canada Child benefit. And in the process, we've seen Canadians create almost 1.2 million new jobs. We've lifted 900,000 Canadians out of poverty, including 300,000 kids. Contrast that with the failure of the Harper decade, where wages were flat, job creation was stalled, and ambition was nowhere to be found. Cuts and austerity don't work. It's only through investing in Canadians that we'll continue to help the middle class and those working hard to join it. Our Liberal team will always put people first, and together with strong voices like Matt in Parliament, we will keep moving Canada forward. Merci beaucoup tout le monde d'être ici ce matin.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Dans le sud du Nouveau-Brunswick, il y a beaucoup de travailleurs du secteur du pétrole qui se sont sentis abandonnés avec l'annulation du projet Énergie-Est. Qu'est-ce que vous avez à offrir à ces travailleurs-là qui, aujourd'hui, trouvent que leurs perspectives sont peu encourageantes?
D'abord, on reconnaît que c'est la compagnie responsable du projet qui a décidé de retirer ce projet-là. Nous allons continuer d'investir dans la croissance économique, investir dans les familles, investir dans les entrepreneurs et protéger nos échanges avec les États-Unis. Nous avons vu à quel point, dans le sud du Nouveau-Brunswick, le commerce avec l'État du Maine et les États-Unis est extrêmement important pour nos agriculteurs, pour nos travailleurs. Eh bien, on a su défendre l'ALENA dans une situation de protectionnisme et d'imprévisibilité américaine. Nous allons continuer toujours de défendre les travailleurs, que ce soit les travailleurs forestiers, que ce soit les travailleurs en ressources naturelles, que ce soit les travailleurs au sud du Nouveau-Brunswick ou n'importe où au pays. We will always stand up for workers, particularly workers who are challenged with limited or the threat of limited access to the United States. We know that southern New Brunswick is an area that is dependent on trade with the United States, and that's why we were so pleased to be able to renegotiate NAFTA and secure a good deal for Canadians at a time of unpredictability and protectionism in the United States. We're going to keep standing up for workers right across the country. In regards to Energy East, the proponent of the project pulled the project off the table, but we're going to keep making sure that we're investing in families, investing in communities to make sure everyone has a chance to get ahead.
Ce matin, il y a une quarantaine d'économistes qui remettent en doute, qui dénoncent le projet GNL Québec qui prévoit la construction d'un gazoduc qui traverserait le Saguenay notamment. Ils remettent en doute les retombées environnementales, économiques du projet. Comment vous vous positionnez par rapport à ce projet-là? Et puis, est-ce que vous pensez qu'il peut vraiment permettre de réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre?
Nous reconnaissons que c'est sous évaluation par la province, par les processus environnementaux. Nous allons toujours nous fier au processus en place pour informer les décisions éventuelles sur ce projet.
Good morning, Salima Shiv, GCBC. When you sweep a region like the Atlantic and you sort of have nowhere else to go but down, how do you keep what you have? I guess, what do you say specifically to voters to tell them that you don't take them for granted, that you deserve their vote?
Voters across Atlantic Canada made a very clear decision in the last election to turn their back on 10 years of Harper cuts and austerity, on cuts to culture, on cuts to communities, on cuts to families, to veterans, to things that matter to Atlantic Canadians. Over the past 4 years, with an extraordinary team of Atlantic MPs, we've been able to move forward on an Atlantic growth strategy, includes investments in infrastructure and innovation and immigration, work in partnership with premiers across the region to grow the economy, to respond to the challenges people are facing. And people in Atlantic Canada, like people right across the country, are now facing a very clear choice. Do we go back to the cuts of the Harper years? Or do we continue to invest in the middle class and people working hard to join it, and invest in things like ensuring that everyone has access to a family doctor? This is the choice facing Canadians right now, And I'm looking forward to Canadians making that choice here in Atlantic Canada and right across the country in just a few days.
Curious to know, why do you think there's been a recent surge in support for the Bloc Québécois and the NDP?
I think we know that Canadians are taking very seriously the responsibility to choose a path forward for our country. Canadians are worried about the cost of living. They're worried about getting access to a family doctor. They're worried about their kids' futures and their jobs, and they're worried about the environment. They need to choose a positive, progressive government that is going to deliver on investments that will help their families. The choice is very clear. Are we going to move forward with a government that invests in people and ensures that everyone has access to a family doctor? Or are we going to go back to a time where conservatives simply cut services? Je pense que les gens à travers le Canada Atlantique et à travers le pays font face à un choix très très clair. Est-ce qu'on retourne aux coupures conservatrices, à l'austérité de M. Harper que M. Scheer propose? Ou est-ce qu'on continue d'investir dans les familles, d'investir pour s'assurer que tout le monde ait accès à un médecin de famille? C'est ça le choix auquel les gens font face à travers le pays. J'ai confiance que les Canadiens vont faire le bon choix pour leur famille et pour leur avenir.
Abigail Beeman, Global News, you won every seat here in 2015. As it's unlikely that that would happen again, what would you consider a successful outcome in Atlantic Canada?
We are going to work hard to ensure that we continue to have strong representation right across Atlantic Canada of great MPs who keep stepping up. We know that right across Atlantic Canada, in every single riding, people are faced with a very clear choice. Do we go back to conservative cuts to services, or do we move forward on making sure everyone has a family doctor, on making sure families get the investments and the support they need for seniors, for young people, for hardworking Canadians? The choice is clear, and I'm very confident about Canadians' choice.
In Atlantic Canada, the Green Party is more of a threat to you here. What is your message to Green voters beyond working to elect a progressive government and not a progressive opposition?
We know that climate change is the largest crisis that our world and our country is facing at this time. And that's why we move forward on the most ambitious plan Canada has ever had to fight climate change. Over the past 4 years, we've done more than any government in the history of this country. And we've done it pushing back against conservative premiers like Jason Kenney and Doug Ford don't want to act on climate change. And Andrew Scheer has made it very clear that he doesn't understand that building a strong economy requires leadership on the environment as well. That's why we're going to stay focused on electing a government that is going to continue to act on fighting climate change right across the country with a strong mandate to push back against those conservative premiers who don't want to do anything for our future. Nous reconnaissons à quel point les changements climatiques sont une vraie menace pour nous et pour tout le monde à travers le monde. C'est pour ça qu'on a mis en place le plan le plus ambitieux à travers le pays dans l'histoire du pays pour lutter contre les changements climatiques. Et nous allons continuer de le faire et continuer de repousser contre ces premiers ministres conservateurs comme M. Kenney, M. Ford, ici au Nouveau-Brunswick, M. Higgs, qui ne veulent rien faire pour lutter contre les changements climatiques. Nous allons continuer d'agir pour protéger la planète et nous allons le faire avec un gouvernement fort parce qu'on ne veut pas avoir un gouvernement conservateur qui va déchirer ce plan historique pour lutter contre les changements climatiques sa première journée au travail.
Joanna Smith, the Canadian Press. You said inside Ms. Joan Kenney's house that regarding the pending closure of Clinic 554 that you'd be speaking to Premier Higgs and that you would also, if necessary, use the tools available to enforce the Canada Health Act. What specifically would you do?
A Liberal government will always defend women's rights, including when challenged by conservative premiers. That's something we know Andrew Scheer will not do. We will ensure that the New Brunswick government allows access, paid for access, to clinics that offer abortion services outside of hospitals. I will sit down with Premier Higgs if re-elected and let him know that we will use all tools at our disposal, including tools that exist under the Canada Health Act. Un gouvernement libéral défendra toujours les droits des femmes, y compris contre des politiciens conservateurs qui veulent limiter les droits des femmes, quelque chose que Andrew Scheer ne ferait certainement pas. Si on est réélu, je m'assoirai avec le Premier ministre du Nouveau-Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, pour lui expliquer qu'il doit fournir une couverture pour les services d'avortement offerts en dehors des hôpitaux ici au Nouveau-Brunswick et que le gouvernement fédéral serait prêt à utiliser tous les outils nécessaires, y compris sous la loi canadienne sur la santé, pour s'assurer que ce soit fait par le gouvernement du Nouveau-Brunswick.
You said in the debate, and you said again this morning, that your government expanded access to abortion here in New Brunswick, but that expanded access actually happened under Premier Gallant before you were elected. So why are you exaggerating your record on abortion here in New Brunswick?
We had very clear conversations when I was leader and when I was Prime Minister on ensuring that New Brunswick moves forward on protecting women's rights. And that's why it is so frustrating to me to see the government of New Brunswick continue to challenge and limit women's rights and women's access to abortion. A Liberal government, a Liberal Prime Minister will always stand up to provinces who want to limit women's rights to choose, something that the Conservatives, particularly under Andrew Scheer, will not do. We will ensure that access to medically necessary services outside of hospitals are provided here in New Brunswick. We will use the tools at our disposal to ensure that that happens.
Michelle Zillia with the Globe and Mail. Good morning. Canada has temporarily suspended its export permits to Turkey in light of the military incursion in Syria. In your opinion, is the violence in northeast Syria the fault of the Trump administration's refusal to support the Kurds and pull its troops out?
We are obviously strongly condemning the Turkish incursion into Syria and very concerned about the situation in the Middle East. We are engaged diplomatically and at the officials level with all of our allies, and we will continue to monitor the situation closely, including the impact on Canadian forces in nearby Iraq and elsewhere. The fight against Daesh is one in which countries from around the world joined in, and this is a situation that concerns us deeply.
And you have been demonizing Donald Trump in your election campaign rhetoric. Are you concerned this could negatively affect your relationship with the president if you're reelected?
I have demonstrated that my responsibility as Prime Minister in regards to the United States is two things: to stand up for Canadian values and to defend Canadian interests. That's exactly what we did when it came time to renegotiate NAFTA. Donald Trump was threatening to rip up this incredibly important trade deal for Canadian jobs, Canadian prosperity from coast to coast to coast. We sat down, pulled together a Team Canada approach where people at different orders of government, from different political parties, from unions, from business, from different organizations, all came together, and Canada spoke as one voice to demonstrate that Canadians were going to remain strong in the face of American protectionism and unpredictability. And we succeeded in renegotiating the most important trade deal we have, despite the fact that in the House of Commons, Andrew Scheer was calling for us to simply capitulate because that's what Stephen Harper had told him to say. And Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are not supportive of the protections we were able to get for our workers, for steel workers, for aluminum workers, for auto workers right across the country. We're going to continue to stand up strongly for Canada. We're going to continue to do it in a firm but reasonable way, because that's what Canadians expect of us.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Tom Barry with CBC. You're saying that voting Liberal is the only way to stop Conservative cuts. Are you trying to scare people, Green voters, NDP voters, into voting for your party?
I think people remember well the cuts and the choices that Stephen Harper had made for 10 years that hurt Canadians, that hurt our veterans, that stopped investing in communities through infrastructure. The choice that Canadians made in 2015 to turn their back on the Harper years was the right one, because over the past 4 years, we've seen about 1.2 million jobs created, most of them full-time. We've seen 900,000 Canadians lifted out of poverty. We've seen 300,000 of them kids. We know that investing in communities is the right way to move forward, and it's a very different choice than Conservatives made. Conservatives choose to cut services. We're choosing to invest so that everyone can access a family doctor. The choice is very, very clear.
Are you trying to scare them, though? Are you using fear to drive NDP voters and Green voters to your party?
We have been very positive in the approach that we take, and we will remain so. I'm looking for a strong mandate to continue to invest in Canadians, and I will be sharp on the policy differences between us and the Conservatives. The Conservatives still believe that tax breaks for the wealthy, cuts to services, are the way to grow the economy. 10 years of Stephen Harper's failures showed that that was wrong. Over the past 4 years, we invested instead. We demonstrated that investing in Canadians grows the economy and lifts people out of poverty. And that's the positive choice that Canadians are facing. Do we continue to do that? Or do we go back to Harper cuts?
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Mr. Trudeau, you've spoken a lot about the things you've accomplished over the past 4 years. I'd like to know what it is you regret the most, something you did or didn't do as Prime Minister that if had another chance you would handle differently.
One of the things that I was most focused on in 2015, after 10 years of a government that played regional politics and looked to pit Canadians against Canadians, was to bring Canadians together. And everything I've tried to do over these past 4 years has been focused on bringing the country together, standing up for people's rights, ensuring opportunity and prosperity right across the country. And yet we find ourselves now in a more polarized, more divisive election than even the 2015 one. And I wonder how or if I could have made sure that we were still pulling Canadians together. I recognize Canadians are anxious about their future, and for everything we've done, for the over 1 million of jobs we've seen Canadians create, for the 900,000 people we've lifted out of poverty, there's still much more to do. And my focus is going to be continuing to do that. And I really hope that Canadians continue to pull together, and I hope that Canadians make the choice to pull together instead of dividing come Monday.
Well, in that spirit, what is the one thing you admire or respect the most about Andrew Scheer?
He seems to be a very strong family man.
You appear to be stalled in the polls, and at this stage, even if you get re-elected, it does not appear to be an enthusiastic endorsement of your first 4 years. Can you tell Canadians what you've learned about being Prime Minister and what you might do differently as far as tone if you're re-elected?
I'm going to continue to fight every day for the middle class and for people working hard to join it. We made a decision in 2015 that pushed back against right-wing economists and conservatives who thought that the only way to grow the economy was give tax breaks to the wealthiest. We chose instead to invest in families. And we demonstrated that that creates prosperity and growth in which more Canadians can participate. But we recognize there's much more to do. For all the 900,000 people we've lifted out of poverty, there are more people who need help. There are more Indigenous communities to work with to build a brighter future. There are more marginalized peoples who still face systemic discrimination and racism every day. We know there is much more to do. Now is not the time to turn back.
But you tout your achievements. Do you also recognize that many people are disappointed in you?
We recognize that we have had and have an extremely ambitious vision for this country. And it takes a lot of hard work. And that's exactly what we did over the past 4 years. And we know there's much more to do. And that's what we're focused on delivering for Canadians, with a strong mandate across Atlantic Canada, across the country, to continue fighting climate change, to continue investing in families and in their communities, and to continue to do things like ensuring that every Canadian has access to a family doctor.
Good morning, Jacques Poitras from CBC New Brunswick. The current funding model for abortion services under Premier Higgs is exactly the same as it was under Premier Gallant. Why didn't you take on Premier Gallant at the time?
We did. We encouraged Premier Gallant to expand access to abortion services, and there were steps made. And we're continuing to work with the province, and I will continue to defend women's rights in every single province in which Conservative premiers are challenging to restrict women's rights.
Next question. Steve Llewellyn from the Daily Gleaner newspaper here in Fredericton. Prime Minister, good morning. The Tories are calling for the creation of an energy corridor across the country. Do you think such an energy corridor is feasible?
I think the imposition of pipelines on any part of the country is not a responsible plan, but that is the Conservative approach. It was a Conservative approach that failed for 10 years under Stephen Harper to get our resources to new markets. That's why we created a process that looks at environmental responsibility, that works with communities, that respects Indigenous peoples, and moves forward in a responsible way. Because Stephen Harper couldn't get things done, and Andrew Scheer won't get things done, because they don't understand that the only way to build a better future is by protecting the environment and listening to communities at the same time. Andrew Scheer's plan is to impose pipelines on parts of the country that don't want it. And we will work with people to build a better future for us all. Merci tout le monde. Thank you all.
It's a little long.
No, wonderful. Yeah, it is. And we had a leaf storm.
I know.